A single doner kebab spit often costs more than a used car. Yet by the end of the day, you're selling that meat in thin slices for just a few dollars per serving. It sounds like a terrible way to make money, but that's not actually the case, at least. Not if you understand how the numbers behind the business really work. And that's exactly why the Doner shop is one of the most underestimated small business models in Germany. There are more than 16,000 Doner shops across the country, yet almost nobody stops to think about how incredibly tight the financial calculations behind the counter really are. At first glance, running a Doner shop looks like one of the simplest businesses in the world. Meat slowly roasting on a vertical spit, fresh bread, vegetables, sauce, and that's it. It isn't the bread, and it isn't the sauce. It's the location. Because in the Doner business, location isn't just important. It determines almost everything. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want to see more business analyses like this one, make sure to leave a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. Ingredient prices fluctuate from month to month. Competitors are sometimes just a couple of blocks away, and the profit you make from each Doner is far smaller than most people imagine. Now it's your turn. Leave your best guess in the comments. How much profit do you think a shop owner actually makes from selling a single Doner? Most people are more wrong than you could possibly imagine. Do you think you know the answer? I don't think you will. I'll reveal the real number later in this video. But first, let's go back to the very beginning, because this is where most people seriously underestimate what they're getting themselves into. Opening even a small Doner shop in a good location typically requires an investment of 40,000 euros to 100,000 euros, depending on whether you're taking over an existing storefront or building one from scratch. The commercial vertical rotisserie alone costs several thousand euros. Then there's the refrigerated display case, the deep fryer, the bread toaster, and perhaps most importantly, the ventilation and exhaust system. In most German cities, these systems are legally required to meet hygiene and environmental regulations, and installing one can easily cost well into 5 figures. On top of that, you have the rent and security deposit, usually 2 or 3 months paid upfront along with business registration, food service permits, your first major inventory purchase, and often business liability and equipment insurance. Many first-time owners don't take those insurance policies seriously until the first water leak or kitchen fire reminds them why they're necessary. If, instead of starting from scratch, you buy an existing Doner shop with an established customer base, you'll usually pay what's known as a goodwill fee, sometimes tens of thousands of euros, simply because the location is already well known and customers don't have to discover it all over again. And that's when the real expenses begin. A Doner meat spit isn't a one-time purchase, it's a recurring cost that never goes away. Now let's talk about the money coming in, because this is where things become even more interesting. A typical meat spit weighs somewhere between 20 and 40 kilograms before it's cooked. Depending on the type of meat, veal, turkey, or chicken in current market prices, each spit usually costs between 150 euros and 300 euros. In busy locations, a single spit can sell out in just one day. In quieter areas, it might last 2 or even 3 days. Scale that up over an entire month, and you're quickly looking at several thousand euros spent on meat alone. And that's just the beginning. Fresh flatbread has to be delivered almost every day. Then there are the different sauces, freshly chopped vegetables, French fries, drinks stocked in the refrigerators, packaging materials, napkins, and countless other supplies customers rarely think about. Altogether, the cost of ingredients typically accounts for around 30 to 35% of a Doner shop's total revenue. That means for every euro a customer spends, roughly 30 to 35 cents immediately disappear just to cover the ingredients, before paying rent, employees, electricity, or any other operating expenses. Now let's look at the revenue side, because this is where the business starts to surprise people. Today, a regular Doner kebab costs customers between 6 euro and 8 euro in most German cities. In larger cities with significantly higher rents, prices can even reach 9 euro or 10 euro. A Doner plate served with fries or rice instead of bread usually costs another euro or 2 more because both the portion size and preparation time are greater. A well-established shop in an average location typically sells between 100 and 250 meals on a normal weekday. On busy weekend nights, especially in areas with nightlife, that number can climb well above 300 orders. Multiply those sales by an average ticket price of 7 euro to 8 nor, and daily revenue can range anywhere from 700 euro to well over 2,000 euros, depending on the location, the day of the week, and surprisingly enough, the weather. Yes, even the weather can have a huge impact. A rainy evening can easily cut sales in a pedestrian shopping district by a third because fewer people are walking around and fewer passers-by decide to stop for a quick meal on impulse. But counter sales are no longer the only source of income. Over the past several years, food delivery apps have become one of the biggest revenue streams for many donor shops. At first glance, online orders seem like easy extra money. In reality, they're much more complicated. Delivery platforms usually charge commissions of 20 to 30% on every order. So if a donor is sold through an app for 8 Norris sell, the restaurant often receives only €5 in a tepper sips to €6 before paying for ingredients, packaging, or labor. That's exactly why many owners intentionally charge €1 or €2 more on delivery apps than they do at the counter. It helps offset those hefty commissions without making the price difference too obvious to customers. Some shops even go a step further by creating a completely separate delivery menu with its own pricing, independent of the menu customers see inside the restaurant. Then comes the third, major expense, one that many first-time business owners seriously underestimate. Labor. A donor shop that's open from morning until late at night usually needs at least 2 employees working at the same time. In many cases, shifts run anywhere from 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. With Germany's steadily increasing minimum wage, plus payroll taxes and social security contributions, monthly labor costs can easily reach between €6,000 depending on the size of the shop and its operating hours. That's one of the main reasons why so many family-owned donor shops have the owners working behind the counter themselves, often 7 days a week. Every additional paid hour eats directly into an already razor-thin profit margin. And then there's the electricity bill. The vertical rotisserie often runs for 10 to 12 hours straight every day. The refrigerated display cases never shut off. Over the past few years, rising electricity prices have become one of the fastest growing operating expenses for donor shop owners across Germany. But hidden beneath all of those obvious expenses are 2 major traps that can quietly destroy an otherwise successful business. The first one is volatile meat prices. The wholesale price of veal, turkey, and chicken can fluctuate significantly throughout the year. Feed costs, energy prices at meat processing facilities, and disruptions in global supply chains all play a role. On paper, a 10 to 15% increase in meat prices may not sound like a big deal. In reality, it can wipe out an entire month's profit. When roughly 1/3 of your revenue is already tied up in ingredient costs, even a relatively small increase in raw meat prices can erase your earnings almost overnight. The obvious solution would be to simply raise your prices, but that's easier said than done. A sudden price increase at the counter often drives away loyal customers. Most regulars know exactly what a donor cost last year, and they're quick to notice when the price jumps. As a result, many shop owners find themselves trapped. Their operating costs keep rising, but they can only increase menu prices slowly and in small steps if they want to keep their customers. The second hidden trap is the market itself. In many German city centers, you'll find multiple donor shops on the very same street, sometimes just a few hundred meters apart. That creates a quiet but relentless price war. One shop lowers its prices to attract more walk-in customers. Soon another shop follows, then another. Imagine your competitor starts selling donors for €5 while your business model only works if you charge €7. At that point, you have only 2 choices. Match the lower price and watch your profit margin almost disappear, or keep your prices where they are and lose customers to the cheaper shop down the street. Over the past several years, this exact pattern has become so common that industry associations in Germany have publicly warned about destructive price wars that leave almost nobody making a healthy profit. To understand what this looks like in real life, let's look at a story based on several actual cases. A man opens his very first donor shop in a busy pedestrian district after spending years working in a relative's business. For the first 2 years, everything goes well. The shop enjoys steady foot traffic. The lease was signed years earlier when rents in the area were still affordable. A loyal group of regular customers returns every Friday evening. Daily revenue stays at around €1,200. Meat prices remain stable. After paying all the bills, there's enough profit left to buy a second refrigerated display case and extend the shop's opening hours. Then, everything changes. During the 3rd year, a large donor chain opens a new location just 2 streets away. To attract customers, the new competitor launches with aggressively low promotional prices. At the very same time, meat prices begin climbing month after month. Electricity costs continue to rise, making it more expensive than ever to keep the refrigerators running and the rotisserie turning all day long. If you enjoy hearing real stories about how businesses succeed or struggle, consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss the next business case study from another industry. The owner reluctantly lowers his own prices to avoid losing customers completely, but that decision pushes his already thin profit margin to the breaking point. For the next year and a half, he fights to keep the business alive. He shortens the shop's opening hours to reduce labor costs. Instead of hiring more staff, he goes back to working long shifts behind the counter himself. In the end, the shop survives, but only because of one crucial advantage. His old lease kept the rent far below current market prices. Meanwhile, the newly opened competitor had signed a much more expensive lease under today's rental rates. After only a few years, the newer shop was forced to shut its doors. That story reveals one of the biggest truths about this business. The difference between a highly profitable doner shop and one that's barely staying alive usually isn't the quality of the meat. It's the lease you signed years ago, the moment you entered the market, and how many competitors eventually decided to open on the same street. But in reality, it's a business built on margins so thin that just one difficult month can mean the difference between turning a profit and going bankrupt. But things aren't nearly as simple as they seem. Before you even sell your very first doner, you've already invested tens of thousands of dollars, and most of those costs are unavoidable. So, after looking at all the numbers, one question remains. Is owning a doner shop actually a good business? The honest answer depends almost entirely on three things: your location, your lease agreement, and the timing of when you enter the market. The difference between a great year and a terrible one can be enormous. In the best case scenario, your shop is located in a busy area with constant foot traffic. You secured an older lease with relatively low rent, meat prices remain stable, and there isn't much direct competition nearby. Under those conditions, after paying for ingredients, wages, rent, utilities, and all your other operating expenses, you're left with a healthy profit margin that repeats month after month like a well-oiled machine. But a realistic bad year tells a very different story. Meat prices suddenly climb. A new competitor opens within walking distance. Electricity costs continue to rise as your refrigerators and rotisserie run almost non-stop, and the profit margin, which was already only a small percentage of your total revenue, can disappear entirely. From the outside, the restaurant may look just as busy as it did the year before. Customers are still coming through the door. The tables are still putting through the door. The tables are still turning on the rotisserie. But behind the scenes, the owner could be making little to no money at all. That's the reality of this business. When you open a doner shop, you're not simply buying a meat spit and a grill. You're making a bet. A bet on a particular street, a particular lease agreement, and on how many other people decide to have the exact same idea at the exact same time. If you look at it that way, the biggest asset in this business isn't the meat.